So today I'm showing milestone 5.
This is Dave.
But first, to briefly recap on milestone 4. The goal there was to get the full game flow in place. So we had all the mechanics, we had the tools, we had jumping, we had a second pass on the level, we had art, we had sound. But a lot of these things...
I'm going to skip this bit, it's boring. I'm going to get to the juice. Here we go. So let's just leave them to lead us into it. Here we go.
Let's go straight into seeing a full-player game in progress.
Brilliant editing there. Like,
really? Yeah.
Welcome, my friends. Welcome to an amazing place. A place where everyone comes to play and create. Play and create what? Games, my friend. Welcome to a place unlike any other. Want to find out more? Let's go straight to the heart of this incredible universe. Craft World. This is the heart where everyone meets up. As you will see, it is a place of infinite magic. See all these pods? Each contains craftlings orbiting Craftworld. Over there is a craftling called Henry. Let's see what he's up to. Visiting Craftworld. Henry wants to play a game.
So this is a very early incarnation of Sackboy, you can see here.
Every bunch of Craftworld is a different game, and Henry can choose which ones he wants to see.
So we've got the kind of cloth earth and the badge kind of motif in place.
There they are, playing a game now. Henry can join them on Craftworld and give them a hand with the level.
Okay, so now it goes into frightening looking gameplay, I think. If you do have a question at any time, by the way, just stick your hand up and we'll...
Everyone ready? One, two, three, four. No arms.
so interestingly, you'll see a little bit of misuse of creative tools, and we're going to talk about... I'll talk later.
But, I mean, these first few milestones that we were doing, by the way, were us leading up to
a green light
thing. And I don't know if people are familiar with that term, green light, but it's a bit like in England we have a TV program called Dragon's Den. I don't know if you have that over here, but it effectively means going into a meeting and convincing a board of scary people that your game is worth publishing. So all of this was geared towards a specific meeting, really.
And this was the penultimate milestone, scarily, before our green light. So I'm actually going to skip forward. So we're going to talk about the Beanstalk, which I just want you to sort of visually register here, which was a 3-month blind alley, but which we learned a huge amount from and actually turned into the English Country Garden. And you can actually see elements. This is the base of the Beanstalk. And you can see elements of the gameplay, the first few levels actually here.
And this, when itself out in that time, then we'll take a different route.
In fact, let's illustrate that by fast-forwarding a little bit to the creative tools, because, user-generated content. Oh, actually, here's a little interesting thing. I'm going to try and show that. So
this is one of them.
The creative tools originally were 100% physical gameplay. So in this example, we have a shotgun. I don't know if you can see that, but they're like blowing holes in that little piece of sponge. And I'm actually going to skip forward to showing you some more of that stuff. So blah, 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 blah. Here we go. Here's the...
So this is, in LittleBigPlanet you have the moon, which represents your hard drive and where you create things. And this is before the moon was ever thought of. So it was literally just a space that existed within your pod. And this
was the inventory screen.
The inventory. So you literally went into this strange little space and had to physically walk and select different colour paints and different decorations and tools and things.
And so you'd hit select on your controller and be teleported into this like physical alternative space. And then once all of you had chosen a tool, you would hit select and you'd teleport back into the main game. So you can see the people disappearing back into the main game once they've found an item they wanted. And we really passionately wanted to keep this physicality, because one of the things LittleBigPlanet innovated on, and I think Dave Smith, who created this in our physics engine, is giving a talk tomorrow, little pimp, on Sackboy and physics. So once you're back in the world, you can now use your physical tools to paint. In this case, they've got paint rollers, but there were other things like hair dryers and shotguns.
We actually really liked this because you could run around using these physical rollers and paint. I think at this stage, we didn't really think that the user-created content was actually going to be such a big part of the game. I think at this point we were thinking literally that, okay, we're going to allow players to make little objects or kind of pictures of things. But when we got to the stage where we decided, actually, we want to make it a full-on kind of game creation tool, really, it quickly became obvious that there's no way you're going to create whole levels and games using that kind of interface. It'd just be a nightmare. So we kind of, it was one of those points where we admitted to ourselves, actually, we're going to need to make something that's a bit more like an editor.
Yeah.
Here, really.
And actually, there was a real crunch point when we were like, okay, how do we? Leaving behind that physicality was a very difficult step, and this is the iteration question that was happening. What was the timeline? And actually, we spent a long time on that one, having differing views and talking in sort of words. And the crunch point came when Mark put together a video, which I have under this one.
Incidentally, this was like an early design for the Poppet system, basically, wasn't it? It always helps to put a nice bit of music over your video too, by the way. It helps to convince.
We were almost trying to work it out for ourselves. We weren't pitching to a publisher or, this was part of our milestone deliverable, but it really was convincing ourselves that it was worth kind of exploring these kind of processes. And we entered into this really rapid phase of development where this kind of non-physical Poppet obviously felt right, and we ran with it, but it took a lot of small iterations, a lot of small cycles to get through that.
I think another appeared to be quite chaotic with what we were doing, so thank you if you're out there somewhere.
Yeah. So this is another example of we'd try and pie menus. Another thing that we found really hard was we were making a transition from the PC world to the PS3 world. And this actually applies. We decided we weren't going to cheat. That had more knock-ons than you'd expect, because suddenly we couldn't use traditional development processes. We couldn't fall back on those kind of, as a developer, ways of wowing people, and we couldn't use those anymore because we couldn't cheat. So this is like a Beanstalk level, one of the renders that we did.
This was actually the main meat of our milestone before the one that we showed earlier, actually.
Notice the title, Attempt 5, and that wasn't a clue yet to us that the Beanstalk was tricky. So
here he comes. So this was like the kind of.
So this guy was actually an in-game model, and he did come up to you. And I'm going to go off on a slightly techie side note as well, which is that we had a scripting system that I'd coded up based around Lua, which is the thing that everyone should use, obviously, etc. And then we thought, hang on. Actually, we're just going to make our own scripting system and reinvent the wheel. And a lot of people question decisions like that, decisions where you're like, well, there's a really good working solution already in the